Little Badman and the Invasion of the Killer Aunties by Humza Arshad. Chapter 8. Weird Weekend. Now, with it being the weekend, I figured Grandpa and I were going to have all the time we needed to get to the bottom of this thing. Yeah, right. Between Dad making me play cricket and Mum making me help prepare for Sunday's big family dinner, we didn't get any investigating done. Dad was ready to pounce before I'd even got out of bed. "Cricket!" he shouted, leaning in through my door. "Ah!" I yelled, jumping in fright. "We have a match today," he added with a grin. "Get dressed, we leave in 4 minutes. Actually, I thought I might go look after Grandpa instead. He's a bit off colour." "He's always off colour," said my dad. "It's hard to tell if he's alive most days. We've almost buried him on 6 occasions." "Right, but I still think I should," I began, but Dad cut me off. "Today you are playing cricket," he shouted, "and you are going to win." "Can I miss it just this once, Dad?" "If you disobey me, boy, I swear I'll ship you straight to your uncle in Pakistan. I've already purchased a crate." "What? No, you haven't." "You want me to fetch the crate?" he bellowed. "I'll fetch the crate. Don't make me fetch the crate." I bit my tongue. I could never be sure when he actually meant it or when he was just being mental. He used to tell me that I once had a brother who had disobeyed him and he packaged him up and sent him off to live in Pakistan for 80 years. Was he lying? You tell me. I just couldn't take the risk. The investigation was going to have to wait. An hour later we were standing with the rest of the cricket team in the middle of a playing field. The others looked as miserable as I did to be there. "Hey guys," I said, forcing a smile. "Ready for some cricket?" "I hate cricket," Jamal Jones replied, barely looking at me. Wow, it takes a special coach to make Jamal Jones hate cricket. My dad had a gift. The team were meant to be playing seemed like happy, normal kids. They were doing a few warm-ups, running back and forth, catching and hitting the ball. Our team just sat around in the shade, looking as tired as we were miserable. Even walking up from the car park had left us out of breath, and there'd be a lot more bellies on show than there used to be. Maybe this wasn't a case of shrunken laundry after all. I looked down on my own belly, sticking out from under my top. Definitely bigger. And I swear Jamal never had a tummy on him before now. There's no two ways about it. All of us had piles on pounds since the aunties showed up. Could this be part of their plan? "Muhammad Ali Khan," came a voice from nearby. My dad turned to see who was calling his name. His mouth fell open. "Abdul Saeed Siddiqui," he gasped. "My old nemesis." "I've never forgotten that day on Manora Beach," he said, "when you cheated and stole victory from me and my brothers at the tyre factory." "Cheated?" shouted my father. "We won despite you cheating." "Huh," laughed Siddiqui. "Well, today I will have my revenge. My team are the greatest 12 and under cricket team this side of Lahore." "And mine," replied my dad, "are the greatest team of any age anywhere on the planet." The other team burst out laughing. Even a few of our team smirked at the claim. What was he thinking? Next he'd be placing bets on us. £100 says we beat you like the wretched dogs you are," shouted my dad. "Wretched dogs?" "Huh? I guess that's one way to refer to a bunch of preteens playing a cricket friendly." "Why not make it interesting?" said Siddiqui. £200. "Ha!" shouted my father. "There is nothing interesting about £200. Not when you have..." He started going through his wallet, then emptying the change out of his back pocket. £207.31 and a half-full loyalty card for Uzbek fried chicken. "Agreed," roared Siddiqui, whipping out his own loyalty card for Uzbek fried chicken. "May we thrash you like a herd of escaped goats." "You are the goat who have escaped and will require thrashing," said my dad, his eyes bulging from his head. If our cricket was half as terrible as that comeback, this was going to be a disaster. And it was. The smell of burnt rubber filled the car. Dad was furious. I swear you could see a little bit of steam coming off his bald spot. To say it wasn't helping him his driving would be an understatement. "He cheated me!" shouted my father, skidding over a mini roundabout. "He cheated me and stole my money!" "I don't think he did, Dad," I replied, gripping onto the dashboard to keep myself from falling out of my seat. "They beat us fair and square." "Impossible! No team of mine would ever lose to a cowardly dog like Siddiqui." "But Dad, haven't you noticed? We've all slowed down a bit." "He must have poisoned you then," shouted my dad. "I don't think so. I've been wondering if it's how much everyone's been eating. You know, since the aunties came to help at school." "He's probably put chemicals in the reservoir," roared my dad, not listening to a word I was saying. "Or some sort of gas in the vents. Or sorcery." "I'd not put it past him to use sorcery." I could see there was no point discussing it with him while he was riled up, but I'd definitely be mentioning my theory to Grandpa when I saw him, because if I didn't know better, I'd swear the aunties had been fattening us up for something. Next, it was Mum's turn to screw up my weekend. The whole of Sunday morning was wasted helping her get ready for family dinner that afternoon. It was a kind of tradition for us all to get together like this on a Sunday, all the aunts and uncles and cousins eating and talking and catching up. But seriously, man, did I really have to help with the cooking? Apparently the answer was yes. The only good thing was that knowing Grandpa would definitely be there. I'd been desperate to talk to him since our investigation had begun, and I knew I was onto something with the food. I just knew it. We drove over to Auntie Salma and Uncle Bashir's place a little before 5. The car boot was full of rattling dishes we'd spent the morning preparing. Mum insisted on driving, so Dad didn't wreck all our hard work. Dad was still in a foul mood about yesterday's cricket, so he just sat sulking in the passenger seat, not saying a word. When we arrived, I followed them up the path to the front door, carrying a big bowl of butter chicken. My mum had cooked a lot, but nothing out of the ordinary. It's like this most weeks. Everyone shows up, everyone cooks, everyone stuffs their faces. Whatever was going on with my aunties, my mum didn't seem to be in on it. Auntie Salma, on the other hand, I wasn't too sure about. "Hi!" squealed Auntie Salma as she tore open the door. She pushed between my parents, nearly knocking their plates to the floor, and grabbed me by both cheeks with her hands. She squeezed them with her super strong auntie fingers, giggling like a crazy person. With my arms full of butter chicken, I couldn't even defend myself. I was hopeless. "Get off, auntie!" I said, shaking my head, but it was no good. She had me in her death grip. "Beautiful fat boy," she said, laughing. "Come in, come in, come in." She took the bowl of butter chicken out of my hands before bumping my dad out of the way and hurrying back inside. I was just about to follow everyone in when I heard a hiss from the bushes. "Psst," said the voice. I looked over to find Grandpa squatting in a hedge, his face peering out at me like some limited edition Asian gnome. "All right, Grandpa, what are you doing in the hedge?" "Aunties," he replied. "So many aunties." "All right. So you're just going to hang out in the bush then?" "I'm waiting for you," he said. "Doesn't Auntie Ozma think it's kind of weird that you're sitting outside in a shrub?" "She doesn't care. Not as long as I get out of her way cooking. She doesn't seem to notice what I do." "I knew it," I said. "It is the food. There's something going on with all this cooking. At first I thought it was a nice change, all the delicious food up at school. But they're up to something." "Up to what?" said Grandpa. "Fattening us up to eat," I said, as dramatically as I could. Maybe," replied Grandpa, not sounding convinced. "Maybe not." "Why?" "It makes sense, doesn't it? Aunties are pretty weird and sinister anyway, so it wouldn't take a lot for them to turn fully evil. And the kids have got to be tastier than the adults, like our lamb's tastier than dirty old sheep. They probably just went crazy and decided it was time they ate all the kids." "I don't know," said Grandpa. "It does seem a lot of work just to eat some children." I said, thinking it through. I guess getting rid of all those teachers and taking their job is quite a lot of trouble to go to. Maybe there's more to the plan. But what? This is what we must find out, he said, leaping up from his bush and nearly falling flat on his face in the process. I took him by the elbow and helped him onto the path. It was time to face the aunties. There were 4 of them at dinner that day. 5 if you count Mum. Each auntie wearing a different coloured shalwar kameez. Each was surrounded by half a dozen steaming dishes. Each was forcing food on everyone around them. But how could we know who was in on it and who wasn't? How could we tell who was a proper auntie and who was an evil auntie? All my little cousins were running around playing as usual. They obviously didn't suspect a thing. Grandpa and I were sitting together at one end of the table, watching everyone. Dad was at the far side of the room between Uncle Bashir and Uncle Rabi, though he wasn't talking to either of them. Instead, he was slumped there sulking, occasionally muttering something about the coach Siddiqui guy under his breath. The uncles just ignored it, talking across him like he wasn't there. "What do you reckon, Grandpa?" I whispered. "Hard to say," he whispered back. "Pretty normal so far, except for all these fat cousins." He was right. These kids were ballooning. It had only been 2 weeks or so since I'd last seen them, but they'd put on at least a stone. The adults weren't doing much better. Uncle Rabi had a triple chin, where a double chin used to be, and was having to use an extension cord as a belt. But that wasn't going to stop the aunties. They kept right on serving dish after dish after dish. Eventually, Mum started to politely refuse, which is never easy at an auntie's house, even for another auntie. This time, though, the response was crazy. At first, one auntie flocked to her with a dish, then seconds later another one. Still, Mum refused their offers. Soon there were 3 of them, each offering my mum something different to eat, pushing her to have just one bit more, just a little bit. In under a minute, all 4 aunties had surrounded my mum and were holding spoons of curry, dal and kheer. "No, really, I'm so full," Mum begged Mum, but they wouldn't listen. Eventually, she gave in and took another bite, nodding and smiling as she struggled to swallow it. But would they leave her alone? Yeah, right. "Oh, go on," said Auntie Uzma, waving her spoon of biryani. "You're just skin and bones, Nasheen." "Yes," said Auntie Salma. "Have a little laddu." "Eat, eat, eat," said Auntie Noor, waggling a pakora under Mum's nose. "This is mental," I said to Grandpa. "Look at them. They're obsessed with her." He said with a nod and a grim little frown. "She's an auntie also. They won't top us till it's done." It took me a moment for him to realise what he was saying. "You mean they want her to join them?" I gasped. Grandpa put his hand on my shoulder, but didn't say anything more. This must be how they went about it, recruiting. It had something to do with the food. But what? How does force feeding someone turn them evil? None of it made sense. I had a bad feeling as I walked into school on Monday morning. The whole place seemed sinister now. Everywhere you looked there was a smiling, cuddly, colourful auntie. Every room you entered had a plate of food or a bowl of sweets laid out ready to be snacked on. Delicious, mouth-watering smells had replaced the familiar old stink of the place. I found Uma sitting at his usual desk reading the back of a bag of crisps. "Why are you reading that crisp packet?" I asked him as I sat down. "It's today's assignment," he replied. "Read something delicious, then eat as much of it as you can." I snatched the bag of crisps from him and threw him out the window. "Hey!" he said, looking offended. "Why'd you do that?" "It's the food," I whispered. "They're up to something with the food." Umar looked at the room. There were kids reading sweet packets, ice cream tubs, fizzy drinks. kids chomping away on all the most delicious sugary foods you could find in the supermarket. They all looked pretty happy, except for Wendy Wang, who was staring irritably at an apple. "Did you not understand the assignment, Wendy?" asked Auntie Uzma from the front of the room. "No," replied Wendy, sounding as annoyed as she looked. "I do not understand why we would waste our time with this." "That is because you've brought in the wrong type of food," said Auntie Uzma, smiling. "You were meant to bring in your favourite delicious treat." "I like apples," said Wendy, not budging. "But there's nothing to read on an apple but a tiny little plastic sticker," replied Auntie Uzma, looking confused. "The best sugary, fatty, delicious foods all have sorts of tasty ingredients and additives to read. And when you're done with that, you can treat yourself by eating it." "I'll stick with my apple," said Wendy, staring hard at Auntie Uzma. Auntie Uzma stared right back at her, the smile slipping from her face. "I think perhaps you're wanting to spend another day with the headmaster, Wendy Wang." "Suits me fine," replied Wendy, shoving her chair back and storming out of the room. Wow, what had happened to this place? Everything was upside down. Wendy was an angry rebel, I was captain of a cricket team, and Uma was a hard-working student. I looked over at him and he was reading another bag of crisps. "Damn it, man, where did that come from?" I snapped. "I bought a family pack," he replied. "Give me that," I said, grabbing the second bag of crisps and chucking them out the window. "Oh, come on, Humza," he moaned. "I'm hungry." "What did I just say about doing what these aunties tell you? It's dangerous." "I thought you were happy about all the food," said Umar, looking confused. "I was. But can't you see? It's all connected. The missing teachers, the aunties, everyone's putting on weight. It's all part of their plan." "What plan?" said Uma. "I don't know. I'm still working on that," I replied, sounding as frustrated as I felt. For the rest of the lesson, I did my best to explain to Umar about mine and Grandpa's investigation. I told him about how we tried to track down the missing teachers and come up empty-handed, about dinner with the aunties and how it had been weird. I told him about David Chesterton hissing at Auntie Uzma and the weird meetings Grandpa had observed at the 24-hour supermarket. Umar sat and listened to everything. He seemed to be following it all, though I did have to chuck 2 more bags of crisps out the window when he got hungry. When the lesson was over, we headed straight to Mr. Offlebox's office to look for Wendy Wang. She was sitting in the corner reading a book. Mr. Offlebox was nowhere to be seen. "Psst, Wendy!" I whispered from the door. She looked up at us. "Oh, hey," she said. "You better not stay. He'll be back in a minute." "How'd it go with the laptop? Did you crack it?" I asked. Wendy nodded. "I got in, but there were no clues. Nothing about the teachers' absences, all the aunties, just a normal computer." "Damn, that's a shame," I replied. "I thought you might be onto something there." "Here you go," said Wendy Wang, reaching into her bag. "I deactivated the password. Do what you want with it, I guess. Don't really matter anymore." Wendy sounded more depressed than I'd ever known her. I was just about to reach over and take the laptop when a shadow fell across the room. We didn't have to turn round to know who it was. Wendy shoved the computer back in her bag. "What are you boys doing in my office?" demanded Mr. Offlebox. Well," I replied. "You won't believe me if I said we were helping Wendy with her homework?" "No," growled Mr. Offlebox. "I would not." "Oh, right," I replied. "Well, give me a minute and I'll come up with something else." "Get outside now, or the 3 of you will be in detention for the rest of the week," shouted Mr. Offlebox. "You don't need to tell me twice," I said with a smile. "Later, okay, Wendy?" Wendy nodded, patting the laptop-shaped bulge in her bag. We were out of there faster than you could say 5-day detention. At 3:45, we were at the school gates waiting for Wendy to be finally released. They had to let her go sooner or later, right? Whatever the case, I'm going to be real late for getting Grandpa today. Uma's stomach was rumbling and he didn't look happy at all. When can I have something to eat, Humza? He begged. You can eat whenever you want, man. But don't let them pull the wool over your eyes. They're feeding you up for summer. He grumbled quietly to himself for a moment until he was interrupted by a loud beeping that seemed to be coming from somewhere between us both. We both looked round. What was that? Said Uma. Dunno, I replied. It sounds kind of familiar, though. A moment later it beeped again. It was coming from my bag. Then it hit me. I knew what it was. My pager! I shouted. I couldn't remember the last time anyone had bothered paging me. I pulled the little black box out from my bag and opened the message. Where are you? Why aren't you here? Call now. Urgent. Grandpa. Quick, I need to borrow your phone, I said to Uma. Something's up with Grandpa. Sure, replied Uma, fishing his crusty old mobile out of his bag and handing it over. Hello? Came Grandpa's voice. It's me. What's going on? Where are you? You've got to get here now, he said, sounding kind of scary. I'm still at school. I'll be there soon, though. No, right now, he snapped. I have something. What is it? I found them. Who? The teachers? Where are they? Mount Fuji? Nigeria? Grand Canyon? I found the link. The link? What is it? I asked. But there was no answer. Everything was quiet. Grandpa? I called out. I could hear him breathing. Short, sharp gasps. He was trying to keep quiet. Someone else must be there. Grandpa? I whispered. What's going on? For a moment, even his breathing stopped. Silence. Then, with a crashing that shook the other end of the line, I heard him yell, Oh no! Cried Grandpa, his voice full of fear. Grandpa? I called. You! He shouted. What have you done with my wife? No! Stop! Click. The line went dead. What is it? Said Uma, looking afraid. I gotta go, I said, pushing his phone against his chest. I gotta get to Grandpa's. And with that, I ran out of school as fast as I'd ever run.